The security camera footage showed everything in grainy black and white. Gate 47, JFK International Airport, 3:47 p.m. A woman collapsed. The crowd scattered like roaches when the lights come on. And there, frozen for just 3 seconds too long, stood Jasmine Wright, watching her last chance at making things right slip away with every second she hesitated. But what she didn't see, what the camera caught perfectly, was the man in the expensive suit standing 30 feet away, watching her with eyes that had seen too much death to fear it anymore. The moment Jasmine dropped to her knees and started compressions, that man made a phone call that would change everything. 3 days earlier, Jasmine had stared at the eviction notice taped to her apartment door and felt absolutely nothing. That's what rock bottom does to you. It doesn't make you cry anymore. It just makes you numb. 28 years old, a business degree gathering dust in a storage unit she couldn't afford, and a corporate job that had spit her out like yesterday's gum. The severance package barely covered 2 months of rent, and that was gone now. Her phone buzzed with another call from her mother. She didn't answer. Hadn't answered in 6 months. Not since the last time she'd asked for money and heard that disappointed sigh that said more than words ever could. The plane ticket to Atlanta sat on her kitchen counter, purchased with the last $300 in her account. Grandma's 80th birthday. The family would be there. Her successful cousins with their perfect lives. Her mother with those eyes that asked without asking why Jasmine couldn't just get it together. She'd packed everything she owned into 2 suitcases because the landlord would change the locks while she was gone anyway. Might as well not leave anything worth stealing. JFK Airport was chaos personified. Jasmine dragged her suitcases through Terminal 4, her flight boarding in 40 minutes. She timed it perfectly. Get there, get through security, get on the plane. No time for thinking. No time for feeling. Just movement. Just survival. She'd stopped believing in signs or fate or any of that inspirational quote garbage people posted on social media. Life didn't work that way. Life took and took and took until you had nothing left but the clothes on your back and a plane ticket to face everyone who'd watch you fail. Gate 47 was crowded. Families with screaming kids. Business travelers with their laptops and important phone calls. Everyone going somewhere. Everyone belonging somewhere. Jasmine found a seat in the corner, away from everyone, and pulled out her phone. Dead. Of course it was dead. She'd forgotten to charge it, and her charger was buried in one of the suitcases. It didn't matter. Who was going to call her anyway? That's when she noticed the woman. Elegant didn't begin to cover it. The elderly Korean woman wore a cream-colored suit that probably cost more than Jasmine's entire wardrobe. Her silver hair was pulled back in a perfect bun. She sat 3 rows away, hands folded in her lap, staring at nothing with the kind of peace that comes from a life well lived. For just a moment, Jasmine felt a pang of something. Not quite envy. More like recognition of a path she'd never walk. The woman stood, reaching for her carry-on bag. That's when it happened. One moment she was standing. The next, she was falling, her body crumpling like someone had cut her strings. The carry-on bag hit the floor first, spilling its contents across the gate area. A book. A glasses case. Pills scattering like tiny white lies across the carpet. Then the woman hit the ground, and the sound her head made against the floor would haunt Jasmine for weeks. The crowd reacted exactly how crowds always react. They backed up, created a circle, started recording on their phones. Someone screamed. Someone else called for help. Airport security was probably 3 minutes away, but 3 minutes is forever when someone's dying right in front of you. Jasmine sat frozen. She'd been here before. Not literally, but close enough. 2 years ago, she'd stopped to help a man having a heart attack on the subway. She'd done CPR, saved his life, waited with him until the ambulance came. A month later, he'd sued her, claiming she'd broken his ribs and caused unnecessary injury. The lawsuit had been dismissed eventually, but not before costing her $3,000 in legal fees she didn't have. The judge had literally said, "No good deed goes unpunished." So Jasmine sat there, watching this woman turn blue, and thought about her flight, about her suitcases, about how she couldn't afford another lawsuit, another complication, another reason for life to kick her while she was down. The woman's lips were turning purple now. Nobody was moving. Everyone was just standing there with their phones out, recording a woman dying because that's what people do now. They document tragedy. They don't stop it. Jasmine's grandmother's voice echoed in her head, something she'd said 1,000 times. Baby girl, when God puts someone in your path who needs help, that's not coincidence. That's assignment. Jasmine had stopped believing in assignments or God or any of it. But her legs were moving anyway, and she was pushing through the crowd before her brain could catch up with her body. Have you ever watched someone you love slip away, knowing you could have done something but didn't? Drop a comment below. She dropped to her knees beside the woman, her fingers already finding the pulse point on her neck. Nothing. Or maybe something. Too faint to be sure. The woman's chest wasn't moving. Jasmine's hands went to the woman's sternum, Muscle memory from a lifeguard certification she'd gotten at 16 taking over. "Someone call 911, she shouted, but everyone just stood there filming. 30 compressions. Hard and fast. She could hear her old instructor's voice. "Push like you mean it. Breaking ribs is better than a corpse." 2 rescue breaths. The woman's chest rose and fell. Back to compressions. Jasmine's arms were already burning. "Come on," she whispered. "Come on, don't you dare die on me." The crowd was bigger now. More phones. More faces. Jasmine blocked them all out. 30 compressions. 2 breaths. She could feel sweat running down her back. How long had it been? 30 seconds? A minute? Time moved differently when you were trying to keep death from taking what it wanted. "Ma'am, step back, we've got this." Airport security, finally. But Jasmine didn't stop. Couldn't stop. Because she could feel it now, something changing. The woman's chest moved on its own. Just a little. Then more. The woman gasped, her eyes flying open, unfocused and terrified. She tried to speak, words in Korean tumbling out in a confused rush. Jasmine sat back on her heels, her hands shaking now that the adrenaline was wearing off. "You're okay," she said, even though the woman probably couldn't understand her. "You're going to be okay." Paramedics arrived with a stretcher and equipment, professional and efficient. They asked Jasmine questions. What happened? How long was she unconscious? Did she hit her head? Jasmine answered on autopilot, her eyes on the woman who was breathing, alive, being loaded onto the stretcher. The woman's hand reached out, grabbing Jasmine's wrist with surprising strength. She said something in Korean, urgent and emotional, tears streaming down her face. "She's thanking you," one of the paramedics translated. "She says you're an angel." Jasmine wasn't an angel. She was a broke, homeless, faithless woman who'd almost let someone die because she was afraid of being sued. But she squeezed the woman's hand anyway and said, "You're welcome." The paramedics wheeled the stretcher away. The crowd dispersed, the show over, already scrolling to the next video. Jasmine stood there, her knees aching from the hard floor, her hands still trembling. Her flight. She checked the board. Boarding now. She grabbed her suitcases and started moving. That's when she felt it. A hand on her shoulder. Not aggressive, but firm. Unmistakable. The kind of touch that said, "This isn't a request." Jasmine turned around and looked up into the coldest eyes she'd ever seen. The man was tall, probably 6 feet, wearing a charcoal suit that fit him like it had been sewn onto his body. His face was angular, handsome in a dangerous way, like a knife that had been polished until it gleamed. But it was his eyes that stopped her. Black, empty, calculating. Eyes that had watched people beg and hadn't blinked. Eyes that had given orders that ended lives and slept soundly after. "You saved her," he said. His English was perfect, barely accented. "You will come with us." It wasn't a question. If you're hooked, hit that like button and subscribe because this story is about to get wild. Comment below. Would you have helped? 3 men in identical dark suits materialized around her. Not threatening, exactly, but there. Present. A wall. One of them picked up her suitcases like they weighed nothing. "I'm sorry, I have a flight," Jasmine said, her voice steadier than she felt. She tried to step around him, but he moved with her, blocking her path without seeming to move at all. "Your flight has been handled," the man said. His face showed nothing. No anger, no kindness, nothing. Just that terrible calm. "The woman you saved is my mother. You will come to the hospital. Now." Jasmine's heart was hammering now. Every survival instinct she had was screaming at her to run, but where? The 3 men weren't touching her, but they didn't need to. They formed a triangle around her, professional and silent. She looked around for airport security, but they were gone. The crowd flowed past them like water around stones, nobody noticing or caring that a woman was being corralled by 4 men in suits. "I don't want any trouble," Jasmine said. "I just want to catch my flight." "There is no trouble," the man replied. "My mother is being taken to a private facility. You saved her life. The least you can do is ensure she receives proper care." He paused, and something flickered behind those dead eyes. "Unless you would prefer I insist differently." It wasn't a threat. Somehow, that made it worse. This was a man who didn't need to threaten. He simply stated facts and expected the universe to comply. Jasmine thought about arguing, about screaming, about making a scene. But she looked at those eyes again and knew, with absolute certainty, that none of those things would matter. "Fine," she said, "but I need to call my family." "Your phone is dead," he said, and the fact that he knew that sent ice water through her veins. How long had he been watching her? "You may use one of ours." He gestured, and one of the suited men stepped forward, extending a phone. Jasmine took it with shaking hands, but when she tried to power it on, nothing happened. "After," the man said, "when my mother is stable, then you may make all the calls you wish." They walked through the airport, this strange procession. Jasmine in the middle, her suitcases carried by silent men in suits, and the cold-eyed man leading them through corridors she'd never noticed before. Staff doors, service elevators, routes that bypass security and crowds and anyone who might ask questions. They emerged in an underground parking structure where a black Mercedes SUV waited, engine running, driver standing at attention. The door opened. Jasmine hesitated. Once she got in that vehicle, she was committed. But what choice did she have? She climbed in, and the cold-eyed man slid in beside her. The door closed with the heavy thunk of expensive engineering. The other men got into a second identical SUV behind them. They drove in silence. Jasmine watched the city slide past, her city, suddenly foreign through the tinted windows. She should be on a plane right now. She should be flying to Atlanta, walking into her grandmother's party, facing her family's judgment. Instead, she was in a car with a man who looked at her like she was a problem to be solved. "What's your name?" she asked, because silence felt like surrendering. He didn't look at her. "Kong Minjun." "Jasmine." "Jasmine, right." She waited, but he said nothing else. "Your mother, is she going to be okay?" "That depends on the next several hours." Now he did turn to her, and she wished he hadn't. "If she lives, you will be rewarded beyond your imagination. If she dies." He didn't finish the sentence. He didn't need to. "I did everything I could," Jasmine said, anger cutting through her fear. "I saved her life back there. If I hadn't helped, she'd already be dead." "Yes," Minjun agreed. "Which is why you are in this car and not in a morgue." The words hung in the air like poison gas. Jasmine's mouth went dry. "Are you threatening me?" "I am explaining reality." He turned back to the window. "My mother is the only thing in this world I care about. The only thing that matters. You have extended her life. For that, I am grateful. But gratitude and trust are not the same thing. You will stay until I am certain she is stable. Then, and only then, will you leave." The hospital wasn't a hospital. At least, not like any Jasmine had ever seen. The building was in Manhattan, discreet and expensive, the kind of place where celebrities went to dry out or politicians went to hide medical problems from voters. They entered through a private entrance, no waiting room, no paperwork, just an elevator that went up and up and up to a floor that probably didn't exist on any directory. The hallway was quiet, carpeted, more like a luxury hotel than a medical facility. Minjun walked fast, his shoes silent on the thick carpet. Jasmine followed, because what else could she do? They stopped at a door flanked by two more men in suits. These ones weren't even pretending to be subtle. They had the flat eyes and thick necks of people who hurt others for a living. Inside, the room was huge, more suite than hospital room. Floor-to-ceiling windows looked out over Manhattan. There was a sitting area with leather furniture, a kitchenette, and in the center, surrounded by medical equipment, a hospital bed. Mrs. Kong lay there, tubes and wires connecting her to machines that beeped softly. Her eyes were closed, her breathing steady but shallow. A doctor in an expensive suit looked up as they entered. He spoke to Minjun in rapid Korean, his tone deferential but urgent. Minjun's face remained impassive, but Jasmine saw his hands curl into fists at his sides. Whatever the doctor was saying, it wasn't good news. Minjun responded in Korean, his voice low and controlled, but there was something underneath it. Not quite anger. Something darker. When he finished speaking, the doctor bowed slightly and scurried out like a man who'd just been given a reprieve from execution. "What did he say?" Jasmine asked. Minjun walked to his mother's bedside, looking down at her with an expression Jasmine couldn't read. She had a massive heart attack. The CPR you performed kept her brain oxygenated, but there was damage to the heart muscle. She needs surgery. He was quiet for a moment. She is 72 years old. The surgery is high risk. But she'll have it, right? The surgery. Tomorrow morning. The surgeon is flying in from Switzerland tonight. Minjun finally looked at Jasmine. "You will stay here until the surgery is complete." "That's like, what, 12 hours? I can't just disappear for 12 hours. I have a family, they'll worry." "Will they?" Minjun pulled out his phone, tapped the screen a few times, and turned it to face her. On the screen was her call log. Weeks of ignored calls from her mother. From her grandmother. From cousins and aunts and uncles. "You have been ignoring your family for 6 months. I doubt they will notice 12 more hours." Jasmine felt like she'd been slapped. "You had no right to look at that. I have every right to know who touched my mother." He pocketed the phone. "I know you are 28 years old. I know you lost your job at Harrison Financial 3 months ago. I know you have $43 in your checking account and $17,000 in debt. I know you are being evicted. I know you bought a one-way ticket to Atlanta because you cannot afford to come back." He took a step closer. "I know everything about you, Jasmine Wright. So when I tell you that you will stay here, you will understand that I am not asking. Have you ever felt trapped by someone who held all the cards? Drop a comment and let us know." Jasmine wanted to scream, wanted to cry, wanted to do something other than stand there feeling naked and exposed. "What do you want from me?" "Nothing. Yet." Minjun gestured to a chair beside his mother's bed. "Sit. Wait. If she wakes before surgery, she will want to thank you properly. The next hours were the longest of Jasmine's life. Minjun sat on the other side of the bed, silent and still as a statue, his eyes never leaving his mother's face. Jasmine tried to doze, but couldn't. Every time she started to drift off, a machine would beep or a nurse would come in to check vitals, moving around them like they were furniture. Around midnight, Mrs. Kong stirred. Her eyes fluttered open, unfocused and confused. She said something in Korean, weak and rasping. Minjun was on his feet instantly, leaning over her, speaking softly in a voice Jasmine had never heard from him. Gentle, almost vulnerable. Mrs. Kang's eyes found Jasmine, and recognition flared. She reached out a trembling hand, and Jasmine found herself standing, moving to the bedside, taking that fragile hand in hers. Mrs. Kong spoke, her voice barely a whisper, tears streaming down her face. She says you are her angel. Minjun translated, his voice tight. She says God sent you to save her. Tell her I'm glad I could help. Jasmine said, squeezing the frail hand gently. Minjun translated, and Mrs. Kong smiled, her eyes drifting closed again. But she held onto Jasmine's hand, wouldn't let go, and Jasmine stood there feeling like the worst kind of fraud. She wasn't an angel. She was a desperate woman who'd almost walked away. But Mrs. Kong was holding her hand like she was something precious, and Jasmine felt something crack inside her chest. Mrs. Kong fell back asleep, but her hand remained locked around Jasmine's. Minjun watched this, his expression unreadable. Finally, he spoke. She likes you. She doesn't know me. She knows you saved her life. For my mother, that is enough. He was quiet for a long moment. Sit, please. Jasmine sat, carefully, Mrs. Kang's hand still in hers. Minjun settled back into his chair, and for the first time, he looked tired. Human, tell me about yourself. Jasmine, right. Why? You already know everything. I know facts. Facts are not the same as truth. He gestured vaguely. You have a business degree but worked in corporate finance doing data entry. What? Jasmine laughed bitterly. Because business degrees don't mean anything without connections. Without money. Without family who can open doors. She looked down at Mrs. Kang's sleeping face. I graduated top of my class. Had interviews at 6 firms. Got offered exactly 0 jobs. Finally took what I could get. Spent 3 years making spreadsheets for people dumber than me who got hired because their dad played golf with the CEO. You are angry. I'm realistic. Anger and realism are not mutually exclusive. Minjun leaned back. Do you know what I do, Jasmine? I can guess. Guess then. She looked at him, really looked at him. The expensive suit that wasn't just expensive but custom. The way the staff moved around him like he was radioactive. The men with guns in the hallway. Something illegal. Something that requires a lot of muscle and a lot of money. I run an organization, Minjun said carefully. We provide services that others cannot or will not provide. We protect our people. We solve problems. He paused. Yes, it is illegal. But illegal and immoral are not the same thing either. That's what all criminals say. Perhaps. He didn't seem offended. My father was a good man. Honest. Worked 3 jobs to provide for us. When I was 12, a man, an American businessman, hired my father to do construction on a building. 6 months of work. When the job was done, the man refused to pay. Said my father's English was too poor, that he had misunderstood the contract. My father tried to fight it. Hired a lawyer with money he didn't have. The case was dismissed. The lawyer kept the money anyway. Minjun's voice never changed, but Jasmine could hear something underneath it. Old rage, carefully controlled. My father had a heart attack 3 weeks later. Stress, the doctors said. He survived it, but he was never the same. Could not work. We lost everything. My mother cleaned office buildings at night to feed us. I was 14, and I learned that the law does not protect people like us. So I found other ways to protect my family. By becoming a criminal. By becoming powerful. There is a difference. Mrs. Kong squeezed Jasmine's hand in her sleep, and Jasmine squeezed back. Why are you telling me this? Because tomorrow, my mother will have surgery. If she survives, I will owe you a debt. And I always pay my debts. He stood, walked to the window, looked out at the city lights. You are educated. Intelligent. Desperate. Those are useful qualities. Jasmine's stomach dropped. I'm not interested in working for you. You have not heard my offer. I don't need to. Whatever you're selling, I'm not buying. Minjun turned to face her, and there was something almost like amusement in his eyes. You are being evicted in 6 days. You missed your grandmother's birthday. Your family believes you are a failure. You have nothing, Jasmine, right? Nothing except the gratitude of a dying woman and her son. He walked back to the bed, looked down at his mother. Wait until morning. See if she survives. Then decide if you want to hear what I have to offer. Before you find out what happens next, smash that subscribe button because this story gets even crazier. What would you do in Jasmine's situation? Comment below. The surgeon arrived at 5 in the morning, a small Swiss man with wire-rimmed glasses and hands that didn't shake. He spoke to Minjun for exactly 7 minutes, his tone confident but not arrogant, the voice of a man who'd done this procedure 1,000 times and succeeded 999. Minjun listened without interrupting, then nodded once. The surgeon left to prep. Mrs. Kong was wheeled away at 6:30. She was awake, groggy from pre-op medication, but lucid enough to squeeze Jasmine's hand one more time. She said something in Korean, smiling weakly, and Minjun's jaw tightened almost imperceptibly. What did she say? Jasmine asked after the doors closed behind the gurney. She said you have kind eyes. That she hopes I will take care of you the way you took care of her. Minjun turned away. She does not understand that kindness is a luxury we cannot afford. They waited in the suite. Minjun paced like a caged animal, silent and dangerous. Jasmine sat in the leather chair, exhausted beyond measure but unable to sleep. She'd been awake for almost 24 hours. Her body ached. Her mind felt fuzzy. But every time she closed her eyes, she saw Mrs. Kang's face, that moment when her heart had stopped and Jasmine had to decide whether to help or walk away. Around 8, food arrived. Not hospital cafeteria food, but real food. Eggs Benedict, fresh fruit, coffee that smelled like it cost more than Jasmine's last meal. She ate because her body demanded it, tasting nothing. Why does she matter so much to you? Jasmine asked, breaking the silence. Your mother, I mean. Obviously she's your mother, but it's more than that. Minjun stopped pacing. For a long moment, Jasmine thought he wouldn't answer. Then he sat down across from her, and when he spoke, his voice was different. Quieter, more human. When my father died, I was 16. My mother could have sent me back to Korea, to family who would have raised me. Instead, she kept me here. Worked 3 jobs. Slept 4 hours a night. I watched her hands bleed from the cleaning chemicals. Watched her fall asleep, standing up on the subway. She never complained. Never asked for help. Just worked. He leaned forward, elbows on his knees. When I was 18, I made my first real money. Illegal money. I came home with an envelope of cash, told her she could quit her jobs. She slapped me so hard I saw stars. Said I would not become my father's shame. Would not destroy my life for money. But you did anyway. I did it smarter. Went to college. Business degree, like you. Learned how to hide money, how to move it, how to make dirty things look clean. By the time I was 25, I had built something real. My mother did not approve, but she stopped working. I bought her a house. Made sure she never had to worry about money again. And she accepted it because she knew I would do it with or without her blessing. He looked at Jasmine. She is the only person in this world who can tell me no. The only person whose opinion matters. If she dies. He didn't finish. Didn't need to. Jasmine understood. Mrs. Kong wasn't just his mother. She was his conscience. His anchor. The thing that kept him human. 3 hours later, the surgeon emerged. His scrubs were clean, his expression neutral. He spoke to Minjun in English this time, probably for Jasmine's benefit. The surgery was successful. We repaired the damage and placed 2 stents. Her heart is beating strongly. She will need time to recover, several months of rehabilitation, but she will live. Jasmine felt something release in her chest, tension she hadn't realized she'd been carrying. Minjun's face showed nothing, but he closed his eyes for just a moment, a prayer of thanks to whatever God he believed in. When can I see her? She is in recovery now. Give it 2 hours. She will be groggy, but conscious. The surgeon pulled off his gloves. She is a strong woman, Mr. Kong. Stronger than most half her age. With proper care and rest, she could have many good years ahead of her. After the surgeon left, Minjun turned to Jasmine. You saved her life twice now. Once at the airport, and once by staying here. If you had not performed CPR when you did, her brain would have been damaged beyond repair. The surgery would have been pointless. He pulled an envelope from his jacket pocket and held it out. This is $5,000. Cash. Consider it a thank you for your time. Jasmine stared at the envelope like it was a snake. $5,000. That was her rent for 3 months. That was her debt payments. That was breathing room. But taking it felt like accepting something more than money. It felt like stepping over a line she could never step back across. I don't want your money, she said. Yes, you do. You need it desperately. But you are afraid of what taking it means. Minjun set the envelope on the table between them. It means nothing except gratitude. No strings. No obligations. Take it. Go back to your life. Forget you ever met me. Can I? Jasmine looked at him. Forget you? You had me investigated. You know where I live, where I work, everything about me. How do I know you won't show up again? You do not. He smiled, but it did not reach his eyes. But I give you my word. Take the money, walk away, and you will never see me again. Unless you choose to. Why would I choose to? Because in 2 hours, you will meet my mother again. And she will ask me to make you an offer. An offer I think you will find very interesting. He stood, straightened his jacket. I'm going to make phone calls. The money is yours regardless of your decision. Think about what you want, Jasmine, right? Think about what you are willing to accept. He left her alone in the suite with an envelope containing more money than she'd seen in months and a choice that felt like a trap, no matter which way she turned. Jasmine picked up the envelope. It was thick, heavy. She opened it. 50 $100 bills, crisp and new. She fanned them out, stared at them. This was real. This was a way out. She could take this money, catch a flight to Atlanta, show up at her grandmother's party late, but there. She could put down first and last month's rent on a new apartment. She could breathe. But she kept hearing Mrs. Kang's voice, that whispered thank you. Kept feeling that frail hand holding hers like Jasmine was something precious. And she thought about Minjun's words. She will ask me to make you an offer. What kind of offer? What could a Korean crime boss possibly offer her that she would want? The door opened. One of the suited men stepped in. Mrs. Kong is awake. Mr. Kong requests your presence. Jasmine stuffed the money back in the envelope, shoved it in her purse, and followed. Mrs. Kong looked impossibly small in the hospital bed, tubes still running from her arms, monitors beeping steadily. But her eyes were open and clear, and when she saw Jasmine, her entire face lit up. She said something in Korean, reaching out with the hand that wasn't connected to N4. Jasmine took her hand, sat in the chair beside the bed. Hi, I'm so glad you're okay. Mrs. Kong spoke rapidly in Korean, gesturing at Jasmine, at Minjun, back to Jasmine. Minjun stood at the foot of the bed, translating. She says she knew you would stay, that she could see your heart at the airport. She says she wants to repay you properly. The money is more than enough, Jasmine said quickly. Mrs. Kong shook her head vigorously when Minjun translated, speaking even faster. Minjun listened, and for the first time since Jasmine had met him, he looked uncomfortable. Mother, no, that is not appropriate. Mrs. Kang's voice turned sharp, commanding. She might be in a hospital bed, but she was clearly used to being obeyed. Minjun argued back, but she cut him off with a single word that needed no translation. It meant, enough. She turned to Jasmine, spoke slowly in Korean, holding Jasmine's hand between both of hers. Minjun translated, his voice tight. She says the money is not enough. Money cannot repay a life. She wants you to stay, to work for her, as her companion and caretaker while she recovers. I'm not a nurse, Jasmine said. You would not need to be. We will have medical staff. But my mother. Minjun paused. She does not trust easily. She wants someone who saved her life, someone she believes is good. She wants you. Mrs. Kong was watching Jasmine with those bright, intelligent eyes. She said something else, and Minjun's jaw tightened. She says she will pay you $2,000 a week. She says the job lasts as long as her recovery, probably 6 months. She says you will live in our home, all expenses paid, and at the end, you will have enough money to start over properly. $2,000 a week. That was $8,000 a month. $48,000 for 6 months. That was more than she'd made in a year at her corporate job. That was enough to pay off her debt and have money left over. That was a future. But it was also 6 months living with a crime boss and his dying mother. 6 months in a world where people disappeared for asking the wrong questions. 6 months of seeing things she couldn't unsee. What would you do? Take the money and run, or take the risk? Let us know in the comments, and don't forget to like and subscribe. I need time to think, Jasmine said. Mrs. Kong squeezed her hand, said something soft and pleading. Minjun translated. She says please. She says you are the first person in a long time who treated her like she mattered. Not because of who her son is, but because she is a human being who needed help. Jasmine felt tears prickling her eyes. That frail hand in hers, holding on like Jasmine, was a lifeline. And maybe she was. Maybe they both were. If I say yes, I want rules. Boundaries. I'm not getting involved in anything illegal. I take care of your mother. That's it. I don't want to know about your business. I don't want to see it. I'm just there for her. Agreed, Minjun said immediately. And after 6 months, I walk away. No strings. No obligations. I'm free. Something flickered across Minjun's face. You will be free to leave. Whether you will want to. He shrugged. That remains to be seen. What's that supposed to mean? It means my mother has a way of making people family. Once you are family, leaving is more complicated. He moved to his mother's other side, placed a hand on her shoulder. But yes, 6 months. Then you are free to go. Jasmine looked at Mrs. Kong, at that hopeful face. Looked at the envelope of money in her purse. Looked at Minjun with his cold eyes that weren't quite as cold when he looked at his mother. She thought about her empty apartment, her eviction notice, her family who thought she was a failure. She thought about 6 months of security, of purpose, of being needed. Okay, she heard herself say. Okay, I'll do it. Mrs. Kong smiled so brightly it was like the sun coming out. She pulled Jasmine's hand to her cheek, said something through tears. Minjun's voice was softer when he translated. She says thank you. She says you are her angel. She says she will take care of you now. And Jasmine, who hadn't cried in months, who'd thought she was all dried up inside, felt tears spill down her cheeks. The estate in Westchester looked like something out of a movie. Not the fun kind of movie, the kind where someone always ended up dead in the third act. 12-foot stone walls surrounded the property, topped with cameras that moved with silent precision. The gate was iron and massive, opening only after 3 separate security checks. The driveway was a quarter-mile long, lined with perfectly manicured trees that probably cost more than Jasmine's entire education. The house itself was modern, all glass and clean lines, perched on a hill overlooking the Hudson River. It was the kind of place where senators and CEOs hosted fundraisers, where deals were made that changed lives without anyone ever knowing. Jasmine counted at least 6 security cameras just on the front facade, and she knew there had to be dozens more she couldn't see. "Welcome home," Min-jun said as the SUV stopped in the circular driveway. He said it without irony, like this fortress was supposed to feel welcoming. "This isn't home," Jasmine replied. "This is a job. For now." He opened his door. "Come. I will introduce you to the staff." The staff. Of course there was staff. A housekeeper named Mrs. Chun who looked at Jasmine with shrewd, evaluating eyes. A chef named Marcus who nodded once and went back to his prep work. 2 daytime security guards, 3 nighttime ones, all of whom looked like they ate protein powder for breakfast and next for lunch. And then there was Dr. Park, a thin Korean man in his 50s who would be handling Mrs. Kang's medical care. "Mrs. Kang will be discharged in 3 days, Dr. Park explained in lightly accented English. "I will be here every day for the first 2 weeks to monitor her recovery. After that, 3 times a week unless there are complications. Your job is to ensure she takes her medications on time, eats properly, and does not overexert herself. Can you handle that?" "I can handle that," Jasmine said, trying to sound more confident than she felt. Dr. Park looked at her like he could see right through her. "Can you? Because if she has another heart attack because you forgot to give her blood thinners or let her climb stairs when she should not, you will answer to Mr. Kang. And I assure you, that is not a conversation you want to have." "I won't forget." "Good." He handed her a 3-ring binder thick as a dictionary. "Everything you need to know is in here. Medication schedules, dietary restrictions, physical therapy exercises, warning signs of complications. Read it tonight. There will be a quiz tomorrow." He wasn't joking. Min-jun showed her to her room on the 2nd floor. Calling it a room was like calling the ocean damp. It was a suite, bigger than her entire apartment had been. King-size bed with sheets that probably had a thread count higher than her credit score. Attached bathroom with a shower big enough to host a party. A sitting area with a couch and a desk. Floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the estate grounds. "Mrs. Kang's room is directly across the hall," Min-jun said, gesturing. "I am on the 3rd floor if you need anything. There is an intercom system. Just press the red button and someone will respond. Do not go into the East Wing. That is private." "What's in the East Wing?" "My office. My private quarters. Things that do not concern you." His tone made it clear the subject was closed. "Dinner is at 7. Formal attire is not required, but please be presentable. My mother values manners." He started to leave, then paused. "Jasmine, thank you for doing this. I know it is not an easy choice. You didn't really give me much of a choice." "No," he agreed. "But you could have taken the money and disappeared. Many would have. The fact that you did not tells me my mother's instincts about you were correct." He met her eyes. "Do not make me regret trusting those instincts." After he left, Jasmine sat on the edge of the bed and tried to process what she'd just agreed to. 6 months. She could do 6 months of anything. She'd survived worse. At least here, she had a roof over her head and money coming in. At least here she had a purpose. She pulled out her phone. Still dead. She'd need to ask for a charger. When she finally got it powered up, she'd have to call her grandmother, explain why she'd missed the party. What would she say? "Sorry, Grandma. I saved a dying woman at the airport, and now I'm living with her crime boss son." That would go over well. The binder Dr. Park had given her sat on the desk, accusing and enormous. Jasmine opened it. The first page was a detailed medical history. Mrs. Kang was 72. She'd had high blood pressure for 15 years, controlled with medication. Her husband had died of a heart attack 23 years ago. She had no other children besides Min-jun. No living siblings. The notes were clinical, impersonal, but between the lines, Jasmine could read a story. A woman who'd lost her husband young, raised a son alone, watched that son become something dangerous to keep them both safe. The medication schedule was complex. 6 different pills at different times of day, some with food, some without. Blood thinners in the morning. Beta blockers at lunch. Statins at dinner. An ACE inhibitor before bed. Miss 1 dose, and the entire careful balance could collapse. Jasmine took notes, made flashcards, set alarms on her phone. She was so focused on studying that she didn't hear the knock at first. When it came again, louder, She jumped. Come in. A woman entered, Asian, maybe 35, dressed in black slacks and a black silk shirt. She moved like a dancer, graceful and controlled, but there was something predatory about her. Her eyes swept the room, cataloging everything, landing on Jasmine with an assessment that felt invasive. I am Yuki, she said. No smile, no warmth. Head of security. Nice to meet you. It is not nice. It is necessary. Yuki closed the door behind her. I need to be clear about something. You are here because Mrs. Kong wants you here. Mr. Kong has allowed it because his mother's happiness is important to him. But I do not trust you. I haven't done anything. Yet. You have not done anything yet. Yuki crossed her arms. You will be living in this house, seeing things, hearing things. I need to know you understand the consequences of talking about what you see or hear. I signed an NDA, Jasmine said, fighting to keep her voice steady. Min-jun made that very clear. I go to jail for violating it. Jail would be preferable. Yuki's smile was sharp as a knife. I have been with Mr. Kong for 8 years. I have seen people betray him. I have seen what happens to them. You seem like a smart woman, Jasmine. Smart enough to understand that some secrets are kept not with paper, but with fear. Are you threatening me? I am educating you. Yuki moved to the window, looked out at the grounds. There are 43 cameras on this property. 17 inside the house, 26 outside. You are never unwatched. Every room except bathrooms and bedrooms is monitored. If you make a phone call, we know. If you send an email, we know. If you try to leave without permission, we know. Jasmine's stomach turned. This is insane. I'm here to take care of Mrs. Kong, not to be imprisoned. You are here because Mrs. Kong asked for you. But that does not make you family. That does not make you trustworthy. Yuki turned back to face her. Earn our trust. Do your job. Take care of her. And maybe, in a few months, I will stop watching you like a hawk watches a mouse. And if I just want to leave, right now, you are free to leave. Yuki opened the door. Mr. Kong keeps his word. You can walk out that door, catch a cab at the gate, disappear. But the money you were promised? Gone. The NDA you signed? Still binding. And Mrs. Kang's heart, which you have already broken once by missing her in the hospital? That is on you. She left without waiting for a response, the door clicking shut with a finality that felt like a cell locking. Jasmine sat there, shaking. What had she gotten herself into? This wasn't a job. This was a gilded cage. But Yuki was right about one thing. She'd made a promise to Mrs. Kong. And despite everything, despite the cameras and the threats and the cold-eyed security chief, she didn't want to break that promise. Her phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. Dinner at 7. East Terrace. Do not be late. MJ. She had 2 hours. Are you feeling the tension? Hit that like button if you're on the edge of your seat. Comment below. Would you stay or leave? Jasmine spent those 2 hours studying the binder and trying not to think about the cameras watching her. She showered in the enormous bathroom, hyper-aware that this was supposedly one of the few places she had privacy. She changed into the nicest clothes she'd brought, a simple blue dress that was probably too casual for this place, but was the best she had. At 6:55, she made her way downstairs. The house was a maze of hallways and rooms, all decorated with minimalist precision. Abstract art on the walls, probably originals worth more than houses. Furniture that looked uncomfortable but was probably designer. Everything was perfect, sterile, like a museum where people happened to live. She found the East Terrace through trial and error, following the smell of food. It was outside, overlooking the gardens and the river beyond. The sun was setting, painting the sky in shades of orange and purple that would have been beautiful if Jasmine hadn't felt like she was walking into a trap. Min-jun was already there, changed into casual clothes, slacks, and a white shirt with the sleeves rolled up. He looked different out of his suit, younger, almost approachable. Almost. You found it, he said, gesturing to a chair. Please sit. The table was set for two, intimate and strange. Marcus brought out the first course, some kind of soup that smelled incredible. Jasmine waited for Min-jun to start eating before she touched her spoon. The soup was perfect, complex flavors she couldn't identify, the kind of food she'd only had at restaurants she couldn't afford. Dr. Park says you spent the afternoon studying, Min-jun said. He is impressed. I don't want to mess this up. Neither do I. He set down his spoon, looked at her directly. I need to apologize for Yuki. She can be intense, but she is protective of my mother and of me. She means well. She threatened me. She warned you. There is a difference. He sighed. Jasmine, I am going to be honest with you. My world is dangerous. I have enemies. People who would hurt my mother to hurt me. Having you here, someone unknown, someone we have not fully vetted, it makes my people nervous. Give them time. Prove yourself. They will relax. How long did it take Yuki to trust you? Min-jun smiled, a real smile that transformed his face. Yuki saved my life 6 years ago. I was ambushed by a rival organization. She was working security at a club I owned. She killed 3 men with a broken bottle in her bare hands. I hired her the next day. So to answer your question, immediately. That's terrifying. She would take that as a compliment. They ate in silence for a while. The food kept coming, course after course, each one more elaborate than the last. Jasmine realized she hadn't eaten like this in years. Maybe ever. At her old apartment, dinner had been ramen or peanut butter sandwiches. Here it was art. Tell me about your family, Min-jun said over the main course, some kind of fish that melted in her mouth. Why? Because you will be part of ours for 6 months. I would like to know who you are. Jasmine considered lying, then decided against it. He probably already knew anyway. My parents divorced when I was 10. My mom raised me and my younger brother alone. Worked as a teacher, barely made ends meet. My brother got a scholarship to medical school. He's a resident now in Chicago. The success story. I was supposed to be the other success story. Instead, I'm the cautionary tale. You graduated top of your class. And look where it got me. It got you here, Min-jun pointed out. Which is not where you expected, but perhaps where you needed to be. That's easy for you to say. You're not the one being watched by 43 cameras. I am watched by many more than that. The FBI, rival organizations, my own people, making sure I do not go soft. He refilled her wine glass. We are all prisoners of something, Jasmine. The only question is whether our prison keeps us safe or keeps us small. Before she could respond, his phone buzzed. He glanced at it, and his entire demeanor changed. The almost relaxed man disappeared, replaced by the cold professional she'd met at the airport. Excuse me, I need to take this. He walked to the edge of the terrace, spoke in rapid Korean, his voice low and controlled, but with an edge that made Jasmine's skin crawl. She couldn't understand the words, but she understood the tone. Someone had messed up. Someone was going to pay for it. When he returned, his face was a mask. I apologize. Business. The kind of business I don't want to know about. Precisely. He sat back down. My mother arrives in 3 days. I trust you will be ready. I'll be ready. Good. He stood, clearly dismissing her. Enjoy your evening. If you need anything, use the intercom. Welcome to the family, Jasmine Wright. She watched him walk away, back into the house, and wondered if she'd just made the biggest mistake of her life. Don't go anywhere. We're just getting started. Subscribe and hit that bell so you don't miss what happens when Mrs. Kong comes home. Drop a comment. Team Jasmine or Team Get Out Now? The 3 days before Mrs. Kang's arrival were a masterclass in preparation and paranoia. Jasmine memorized medication schedules until she could recite them in her sleep. She learned how to take blood pressure readings, how to recognize the signs of stroke or another heart attack, how to help someone safely in and out of bed without straining surgical wounds. Dr. Park quizzed her relentlessly, and when she got an answer wrong, he made her start over from the beginning. Mrs. Kang's life is in your hands now, he said on the second day, watching her practice wrapping a blood pressure cuff. If something happens because you were careless or stupid, Mr. Kong will hold you responsible. And trust me, you do not want that. Everyone keeps saying that. Jasmine snapped, frustrated. What exactly would he do? Kill me? Over a missed medication. Dr. Park's face went very still. No, he would not kill you. That would be too quick. He would make sure you understood, truly understood, the consequences of your failure. And then you would wish he had killed you. He adjusted the cuff on Jasmine's practice dummy. Do not test him. Please. I like you. I would hate to see what you would become. That night, Jasmine couldn't sleep. She lay in her enormous bed, staring at the ceiling, and wondered what Dr. Park meant. What did Min-jun do to people who disappointed him? She'd seen glimpses of it, that cold fury when he was on the phone, that complete lack of empathy in his eyes when he talked about business. But she hadn't seen it directed at anyone. Not yet. Around 2 in the morning, she heard voices. Raised voices, coming from somewhere below. She got out of bed, crept to her door, opened it a crack. The voices were clearer now, coming from the first floor. One was Min-jun. The other was unfamiliar, male, pleading in Korean. Jasmine knew she shouldn't. Knew it was exactly the kind of thing Yuki had warned her about. But she couldn't help herself. She moved to the stairs, staying in the shadows, and looked down. The foyer was lit by a single lamp. Min-jun stood in the center, still dressed despite the late hour, his hands in his pockets. In front of him, a man knelt on the marble floor. He was maybe 30, Korean, his face bruised and bloody. He was crying, begging, the words tumbling out too fast for Jasmine to catch even if she'd understood the language. Min-jun listened without expression. When the man finally stopped talking, Min-jun said something quietly. The man started crying harder, shaking his head frantically. Min-jun repeated himself, his tone unchanged. The man crawled forward, grabbed Min-jun's legs, begging. Min-jun stepped back, disgusted. He said one word, sharp as a gunshot. 2 of the security guards appeared from nowhere, hauled the man to his feet. The man was screaming now, fighting, but the guards dragged him toward a door Jasmine had never noticed, tucked under the stairs. They disappeared through it, and the screaming cut off abruptly when the door closed. Minjun stood there alone for a moment. Then he looked up, directly at Jasmine hiding in the shadows. Their eyes met. Jasmine froze, caught, her heart hammering. Minjun said nothing, just looked at her with those dead eyes for 5 seconds that felt like 5 hours. Then he turned and walked away, disappearing into the east wing. Jasmine ran back to her room, locked the door even though she knew it was pointless, and sat on her bed shaking. What had she just seen? What happened to that man? The door under the stairs, where did it lead? She didn't want to know, but she couldn't stop imagining. She didn't sleep the rest of the night. The next morning, Jasmine came downstairs to find Minjun at breakfast, reading a newspaper, looking like he'd slept perfectly. Good morning, he said pleasantly. Coffee. What happened last night? The words were out before Jasmine could stop them. Minjun set down his newspaper. You should not have been watching. I heard voices. I was worried. Worried about what? That I was in danger in my own home. He poured himself coffee, the picture of calm. The man you saw was an employee who made a mistake. A costly mistake. He was dealt with. Dealt with how? In a way that ensures he will not make that mistake again. Minjun met her eyes. Would you like details, Jasmine? Would knowing exactly what happened to him make you feel better or worse? I don't want to be part of this. You are not part of this. You are part of my mother's care. What I do to maintain my business is separate. He buttered a piece of toast with careful precision. But since you asked, I will tell you. The man stole from me $50,000, thinking I would not notice or would not care. I gave him a choice. Return the money with interest and accept punishment, or refuse and face worse consequences. He chose to return the money. And the punishment? 2 broken fingers on his right hand. A reminder that stealing from me has a price. Minjun bit into his toast, chewed, swallowed. He is alive. He still has his life and most of his hand. He will think twice before betraying me again. That is mercy in my world. Jasmine felt sick. That's not mercy. That's torture. That is survival. That is what keeps my organization running and my people safe. He leaned forward. You think I am cruel? Perhaps I am. But cruelty with purpose is better than chaos. Every person who works for me knows the rules. Break them, face consequences. Follow them, prosper. It is simple. Nothing about this is simple. No, Minjun agreed. But it is honest. I do not pretend to be something I am not. I do not lie to myself about what I do. Can you say the same? What's that supposed to mean? It means you took this job knowing who I was. Knowing what I did. You can pretend you did it for my mother, that you were just a caretaker, but you took money from a criminal. You are living in a house bought with illegal money. You are eating food, wearing clothes, sleeping in a bed paid for by the things you claim to want no part of. He stood, straightened his jacket. You do not get to judge me, Jasmine. Not when you benefit from what I do. He left her sitting there, the truth of his words sitting in her stomach like stones. Mrs. Kong came home on a Thursday afternoon. An ambulance brought her, not because she needed it, but because Minjun insisted. Dr. Park supervised every step of transferring her from the gurney to a wheelchair, from the wheelchair to her bed. The room across from Jasmine's had been transformed into a medical suite, with a hospital bed, monitors, everything Mrs. Kong might need. But Mrs. Kong hated it immediately. She said something sharp in Korean, waving her hand dismissively at the equipment. Minjun tried to argue, but she cut him off with that same commanding tone Jasmine had heard in the hospital. Dr. Park hid a smile. What's she saying? Jasmine asked. She says she is not dying and will not be treated like she is dying. Minjun translated, clearly frustrated. She wants the regular bed put back. She wants the monitors removed. She wants her room to look like a room, not a hospital. The medical equipment is necessary, Dr. Park interjected. Mrs. Kong responded, and Dr. Park's smile grew. She says you can check her vitals 3 times a day like a normal doctor instead of watching her like a hawk. She says she survived 72 years without being monitored every second and will survive more. Minjun looked at Jasmine helplessly. Can you talk to her? Me? I just met her. She likes you. She will listen to you. Jasmine approached the bed carefully. Mrs. Kong looked tired but alert, her eyes bright with determination. Mrs. Kong, Jasmine said slowly. The equipment is to keep you safe. To make sure we catch any problems early. Mrs. Kong reached out, took Jasmine's hand, said something soft in Korean. Minjun translated. She says she knows you care, but she cannot live in fear of dying. She must live like she is living. Jasmine understood that. Understood it in her bones. She looked at Dr. Park. What if we compromise? Keep the blood pressure monitor, lose the rest? Jasmine checks her vitals 3 times a day, more if there are any concerns. Dr. Park considered. The blood pressure monitor and a pulse oximeter. Those are non-negotiable. Mrs. Kong, who apparently understood more English than she let on, nodded. Okay, good. Min-jun looked relieved. Thank you. Do not thank me yet, Dr. Park said. The real work starts now. He was right. The first week was exhausting. Mrs. Kong was a terrible patient. She wanted to walk when she should rest. She tried to go downstairs when stairs were forbidden. She picked at her food, claiming it was too bland, even though the chef was making special low-sodium meals. She argued about every medication, every restriction, every rule. But she was also funny, warm, determined. She taught Jasmine Korean words, laughing at her pronunciation. She told stories about Min-jun as a child, stories that made him blush and try to change the subject. She held Jasmine's hand while they watched Korean dramas together, neither of them understanding the same language, but both of them understanding the story. And slowly, carefully, Jasmine fell in love with her. It wasn't sudden. It was gradual, like spring arriving. The way Mrs. Kang's face lit up when Jasmine entered the room. The way she insisted on braiding Jasmine's hair, her fingers gentle and sure. The way she said, "my daughter," in Korean, not realizing Jasmine had learned those words. The way she made Jasmine feel seen, valued, important. 3 weeks in, Jasmine's grandmother finally got through on the phone. Jasmine had been avoiding her calls, not knowing what to say. But her grandmother was persistent, and guilt finally won. Jasmine Marie Wright, where have you been? Her grandmother's voice was equal parts worried and angry. You miss my party. Your mother is beside herself. What is going on? Jasmine had prepared a lie. A job opportunity she couldn't pass up. A live-in position taking care of an elderly woman. All technically true, just missing some key details. But when she opened her mouth, what came out was, "I'm sorry, Grandma. I'm so sorry. I messed up everything, and I was ashamed to face you all." There was silence on the other end. Then, softly, "Baby, we don't care about success. We care about you. Where are you? Are you safe?" "I'm safe. I promise. I'm working, I'm okay. I just needed time to figure things out. Your mother would like to talk to you." "I know. I'll call her. Soon. I promise." Jasmine looked out the window at the manicured grounds, the high walls. "I love you, Grandma. I love you too, baby. Come home when you can." After she hung up, Jasmine found Mrs. Kong watching her from the bed. "Family?" she asked in careful English. "Yes. My grandmother. You miss them?" "I do." Mrs. Kong patted the bed beside her. Jasmine sat, and Mrs. Kong took her hand. She said something long and complicated in Korean, her voice gentle. Jasmine shook her head. "I don't understand." Mrs. Kong tried again, slower, mixing in English words. "Family, not always blood. Sometimes, choice. You choose us. We choose you. Now, you have 2 families." Tears burned Jasmine's eyes. "Thank you." Mrs. Kong pulled her close, held her like a mother would, and Jasmine let herself cry for the first time in months. Cried for everything she'd lost, and everything she was afraid of losing. And Mrs. Kong just held her, rocking slightly, humming something that sounded like a lullaby. That was when Min-jun found them. He stood in the doorway, and for just a moment, Jasmine saw something crack in his armor. Something vulnerable and human. Then it was gone, and he was cold again, professional again. But later that night, there was a knock on Jasmine's door. When she opened it, Min-jun stood there with the phone. "This is yours," he said. "New number, but your contacts have been transferred. The bill is paid. Call your family whenever you want. No restrictions." "Why?" "Because my mother asked me to. Because she is right. You should not be cut off from your family." He started to leave, then paused. "You make her happy, Jasmine. I have not seen her this happy in years. Whatever I am paying you, it is not enough." Before Jasmine could respond, he was gone. "Are you crying yet? Hit that like button if you're feeling the emotions. Comment, what would you sacrifice for found family?" The next 2 months passed in a rhythm that felt almost normal. Jasmine woke at 6, checked Mrs. Kang's vitals, helped her with morning medications. They had breakfast together, usually Korean food that Mrs. Kong insisted on teaching Jasmine to appreciate. Seaweed soup, kimchi, rice with a perfectly fried egg on top. Food that tasted like home, even though it was nothing like the home Jasmine had known. Mrs. Kang's English improved. Jasmine's Korean improved. They met somewhere in the middle, in a language that was part words and part understanding. They watched cooking shows and game shows. They took slow walks around the garden when Dr. Park approved it. They played cards, Mrs. Kong winning almost every time and laughing at Jasmine's terrible poker face. And Jasmine tried very hard not to think about what Min-jun did in the East Wing. Tried not to notice when he came home at 3 in the morning with blood on his cuffs that he thought no one saw. Tried not to hear the phone calls in Korean that ended with someone crying. Tried not to connect the dots between the news reports of rival gang violence and the satisfied expression on Yuki's face. But one night, 3 months into her stay, pretending became impossible. Jasmine was in the kitchen getting Mrs. Kang's evening tea when she heard the commotion. Shouting in Korean, multiple voices, angry and urgent. She moved to the kitchen door, looked out carefully. Minjun stood in the foyer with 3 of his men. They'd brought someone with them, dragging him between them. The man was young, maybe 25, Korean, bleeding from a cut above his eye. But what made Jasmine's blood run cold was the woman with them. Also Korean, maybe 30, her hands zip-tied behind her back, mascara running down her face from crying. She was begging, pleading in Korean that Jasmine couldn't understand, but felt in her bones. Minjun listened, his face carved from ice. When the woman finished talking, he said something short. One of his men hit her across the face, and she dropped to her knees. The young man with them started screaming, fighting against the guards holding him, and Jasmine realized they were together. Husband and wife maybe, or brother and sister, or lovers. Minjun spoke again, his voice never rising, and the room fell silent. He walked to the young man, said something quietly. The young man spit in his face. The room exploded. Minjun's fist connected with the young man's stomach, doubling him over. The guards let him fall, and Minjun kicked him twice, methodically, precisely. The woman was screaming now, trying to get to him, but Yuki appeared from nowhere and held her back. Jasmine watched, frozen, as Minjun crouched beside the young man. He said something, pulled out a gun from inside his jacket, and pressed it against the young man's temple. The woman's screams became inhuman, desperate. The young man closed his eyes, waiting for death. Minjun stood up, gun still aimed, and looked directly at Jasmine standing in the kitchen doorway. Their eyes met. He knew she was there, had probably known the whole time, and he wanted her to see this, wanted her to understand what he was capable of. Please, Jasmine heard herself say. The word came out small, breaking. Please don't. The entire room turned to look at her. Yuki's expression was furious. The guards looked shocked. Minjun's face showed nothing at all. Go back upstairs, Jasmine. Please. Whatever they did, please. Not like this. You do not understand what they did. Then tell me. She stepped into the foyer, her legs shaking. Tell me what could possibly justify execution in your living room. They tried to kill my mother. Minjun's voice was still calm, still controlled, but something underneath it burned. They were hired by a rival organization. They were supposed to poison her medication. Instead, they lost their nerve and ran. My people caught them before they could disappear. Jasmine looked at the couple on the floor. The young man was bleeding, conscious but barely. The woman was staring at Jasmine with desperate, pleading eyes. Did they do it? Did they poison her? No. But intent is enough. It's not. It can't be. Jasmine moved closer, even though every instinct screamed at her to run. If you kill people for what they might have done, how are you different from the people who killed your father? Minjun's expression flickered. Just for a second, something like pain crossed his face. Do not speak about my father. Why not? You said he was killed by someone powerful, someone who faced no consequences. You became this to protect your mother from people like that. But now you are people like that. Jasmine, go upstairs. His voice was dangerous now, the ice cracking to show fire underneath. This does not concern you. It does concern me. Because in 3 months, I walk away from here. And if I walk away knowing I watched you murder 2 people and said nothing, then I'm complicit. Then I'm just as guilty as you. You are already complicit, Minjun said quietly. The moment you took my money, the moment you moved into this house, you became part of this. You do not get to claim innocence now. Maybe not. But I get to claim humanity. Jasmine knelt beside the woman, looked into her terrified eyes. What's your name? The woman stared at her, confused. Ji-won, she whispered. Ji-won. That's beautiful. Jasmine looked up at Minjun. Her name is Ji-won. His name is probably something equally beautiful. They're not just problems to solve or threats to eliminate. They're people. They made a mistake. They ran instead of going through with it. That has to count for something. It counts for nothing. But Minjun lowered the gun slightly. They accepted money to kill my mother. The fact that they failed does not erase their intent. Then punish them some other way. Break their fingers like you did to the thief. Take their money. Exile them. But don't kill them. Please. If you have any humanity left, if your mother's kindness means anything to you, please don't do this. The room was silent except for Ji-won's quiet sobbing. Minjun stared at Jasmine for a long moment. Then he said something in Korean to Yuki. Yuki responded, clearly arguing, but Minjun cut her off with a single word. She fell silent, furious but obedient. Minjun holstered his gun. They will live, but they will not leave unpunished. He spoke to the couple in Korean, and the young man's eyes went wide with fear. Minjun repeated himself, and the man nodded frantically, agreeing to whatever terms were being set. What did you tell them? Jasmine asked. That they have 1 hour to leave New York. That if they are ever seen in this city again, they will die slowly. That they will tell everyone they know what happens to people who threaten my family. He looked at Jasmine. Are you satisfied? No, but it's better than murder. It is mercy I do not usually extend. Do not expect it to become a habit. He gestured to his men. Get them out of here. The couple was dragged away, Ji-won still crying but alive, her husband conscious enough to walk. When they were gone, Min-jun turned to Jasmine. You overstepped. I know. You questioned my authority in front of my people. You made me look weak. I'm sorry. No, you are not. You would do it again. He moved closer, and Jasmine forced herself not to back away. I allowed this because my mother would be devastated if something happened to you. But do not mistake my allowance for approval. The next time you interfere with my business, there will be consequences. I understand. Do you? He was close enough now that she could see the exhaustion behind his eyes, the weight of being what he was. You think you saved them. You think you did something good. But they will be found within a week by the people who hired them. And those people will kill them for failing. So your mercy just delayed their deaths, not prevented them. Maybe, but at least their blood isn't on your hands. Or mine. Min-jun laughed, but there was no humor in it. My hands have been covered in blood since I was 18 years old. Adding 2 more corpses would not have changed anything. He started to walk away, then paused. My mother was asking for you earlier. Go to her. Pretend tonight never happened. That is what we do here. We pretend. Jasmine found Mrs. Kong awake, reading in bed. She looked up when Jasmine entered, and her smile faded immediately. What is wrong? Nothing. I just brought your tea. You are lying. Mrs. Kong set down her book, patted the bed. Sit. Tell me. Jasmine sat, and suddenly she was crying, the whole awful scene pouring out of her. Mrs. Kong listened, her face grave, her hand holding Jasmine's tightly. When Jasmine finished, Mrs. Kong was quiet for a long time. Finally, she spoke in careful English. My son is not a good man. I know this. I raised him to be good, but the world made him something else. She touched Jasmine's cheek, wiping away tears. But tonight, because of you, he chose mercy. That is important. That is hope. Is it? Or did I just make everything worse? You made him remember he is human. That is never worse. Mrs. Kong smiled sadly. I am dying, Jasmine. Not today, maybe not this year. But soon. And I worry what my son becomes when I am gone. Who will remind him to be human? Mrs. Kong, don't talk like that. It is truth. And truth is important. She squeezed Jasmine's hand. I see how you look at this place. Like a prison. But maybe it is a chance. A chance to change something. To save someone who does not think he needs saving. I can't save him. I can barely save myself. Sometimes saving each other is the same thing. Mrs. Kong pulled Jasmine close, held her. Stay? Not just 6 months. Stay and be my daughter. Stay and help me teach my son how to be good again. Jasmine wanted to say no. Wanted to explain that she wasn't a miracle worker, that she couldn't fix what was broken in Min-jun. But Mrs. Kong felt so fragile in her arms, and the hope in her voice was so desperate, that Jasmine couldn't form the words. So she just held on and let herself be held, and didn't think about the future or the past. Just this moment, this connection, this woman who'd somehow become the mother she'd always needed. We're almost at the end, and you need to see how this resolves. Hit subscribe right now. Comment below. Can people like Min-jun really change? The next morning, everything felt different. Jasmine woke to find an envelope under her door. Inside was a handwritten note in precise English. Thank you for reminding me I am my mother's son, not just my father's ghost. MJ. Beneath it was a check. Not for the agreed-upon $2,000 a week. For $10,000. A bonus, apparently, for saving 2 lives instead of just 1. Jasmine stared at the check, unsure what it meant. Was it gratitude? An apology? Or a reminder that everything here, even mercy, had a price? She found Min-jun in the garden, watching the sunrise with a cup of coffee. He didn't turn when she approached, but he knew she was there. You did not sleep. Neither did you. I rarely do. He gestured to the empty chair beside him. Sit. Please. They sat in silence for a while, watching the sky turn from purple to pink to gold. Finally, Min-jun spoke. When I was 16, the man who refused to pay my father, the businessman, he came to our apartment. Offered my mother money. Hush money, to make the lawsuit go away. It was more money than we had seen in our lives. My mother spit in his face. He smiled slightly at the memory. I asked her why. Why she would not take it when we needed it so desperately. She said, because some things cannot be bought. Dignity. Honor. The knowledge that you did the right thing. I did not understand then. I thought she was a fool. And now I think she was the wisest person I ever knew. And I think I have spent 24 years becoming exactly the kind of man she taught me to hate. He looked at Jasmine. Last night, you reminded me of that. Thank you. You don't have to be this person, Jasmine said quietly. You have money. Power. You could walk away, start over. Could I? What do you think happens to men like me who try to walk away? My enemies would see weakness. My own people would see betrayal. I would be dead within a month, and my mother would follow shortly after. He shook his head. I am trapped by the empire I built to protect her. The irony is not lost on me. Then don't walk away. Transform. Use your power differently. There are people in your organization, in your community, who depend on you. What if you protected them legally instead of criminally? Minjun laughed, but it was thoughtful. You sound like a business consultant. I was supposed to be one. Before everything fell apart, Jasmine pulled out her phone, showed him notes she'd been taking. I've been watching, listening. You have legitimate businesses. Real estate, restaurants, import-export. What if those became the focus instead of a side project? What if you slowly transitioned everything legal? It would take years, maybe a decade. So, your mother could live another decade with proper care. Wouldn't she rather spend it watching you become legitimate than watching you become more of what you hate? Minjun was quiet for a long time. You have thought about this. I've had 3 months and not much else to think about. Jasmine hesitated. Your mother asked me to stay. Past the 6 months. She wants me to help her teach you how to be good again. And what did you tell her? I didn't. Because I don't know if I can. I don't know if anyone can. She met his eyes. But I think maybe it's not about teaching you. Maybe it's about reminding you who you already are underneath all of this. And who is that? Your mother's son. Someone who was hurt by injustice and decided to fight it the only way he knew how. Someone who made terrible choices for good reasons. She paused. Someone who can still choose differently. Minjun stood, walked to the edge of the garden, looked out at the walls surrounding his property. If I agree to try this, to transition legitimate, it will be dangerous. My rivals will see opportunity. My own people will resist. There will be violence before there is peace. I know. And you would stay? Knowing that. Jasmine thought about her tiny apartment she'd lost. Her corporate job that had spit her out. Her family who thought she was a failure. She thought about Mrs. Kang's gentle hands braiding her hair. About finding purpose and taking care of someone who needed her. About the possibility, however small, of actually making a difference. I'll stay, she said. Not just for her. For you too. Because somebody has to believe you're more than what you've become. Might as well be me. Minjun turned back to her, and for the first time since she'd met him, he smiled. Really smiled. It transformed his entire face, made him look young and almost innocent. You are either very brave or very foolish. Probably both. My mother chose well. He extended his hand. 6 more months. We will see if your optimism survives reality. If it does, we will discuss making this permanent. Jasmine shook his hand. His grip was firm, warm, human. Deal. The next 3 months were chaos and transformation intertwined. Minjun started meeting with lawyers, accountants, business consultants. He brought Jasmine to meetings, valuing her fresh perspective, her business degree finally finding purpose. She helped him identify which operations could be legitimized, which needed to be dissolved, which key people needed to be retained or removed. It wasn't smooth. 2 of his top lieutenants quit, unwilling to go legitimate. A rival organization tested him, seeing the transition as weakness, and Minjun had to prove he was still dangerous enough to respect. There was a car bombing, thankfully with no casualties. There were threats, attempts at intimidation, sleepless nights when Jasmine wondered if she'd pushed him into something that would get them all killed. But through it all, Mrs. Kong got stronger. Her heart healed. Her energy returned. She started cooking again, teaching Jasmine family recipes passed down through generations. She told stories about Korea, about coming to America with nothing, about falling in love with a man who worked himself to death trying to provide. She made Jasmine understand where Minjun's rage came from, and why it needed to be transformed rather than condemned. And somewhere in those months, Jasmine stopped being a caretaker and became family. Real family. The kind you choose, the kind that chooses you back. On the 6-month anniversary of her arrival, Jasmine's grandmother came to visit. She'd insisted, despite Jasmine's protests, and Minjun had arranged everything. A car to pick her up, a guest suite prepared, security that was present but invisible. Jasmine was terrified. What would her grandmother think of this place? Of these people? Of the choices Jasmine had made? But her grandmother took one look at Mrs. Kong, saw them together in the kitchen making dinner, and understood immediately. After dinner, she pulled Jasmine aside. Baby girl, I don't know exactly what's happening here, and I suspect I don't want to know. But I see you. Really see you. And you look happy. You look like you finally found where you belong. Is that okay? That it's here, with them, instead of with my real family. Her grandmother cupped Jasmine's face. Family isn't about blood or where you came from. It's about who shows up when you need them. Who sees you at your worst and stays anyway. Who makes you want to be better. She glanced at Minjun, who was helping Mrs. Kong clear dishes. Even if they come in unexpected packages. That night, Jasmine made her decision. When Minjun came to ask if she'd stay past the original 6 months, she didn't hesitate. Yes, but I want a real role. Not just caretaker. I want to be part of the transition. Business operations, community outreach, whatever needs doing. I want to help build something good. You will have it. Minjun pulled out papers, already prepared. I am making you vice president of Kong Enterprises. Salary of $150,000 a year. Full benefits. Equity stake in the legitimate businesses. And this. He handed her a second envelope. Inside was a deed. To a condo in Manhattan, fully paid, in her name. Your home. So you always have somewhere to go if you decide this is not where you belong. Jasmine stared at the deed, tears blurring her vision. I don't understand. Why would you give me an escape route? Because my mother taught me that love is not chains. It is freedom. If you stay, I want it to be because you choose to, not because you have nowhere else to go. He smiled slightly. Also, she threatened to haunt me if I trapped you here. And I believe her. They told Mrs. Kong together. She cried, happy tears, pulling Jasmine into a fierce hug. She said something long and emotional in Korean, and Minjun translated, his voice rough. She says you came to us as a stranger who saved her life. You stayed as an employee who cared for her. But now you are her daughter, truly and forever. She says she always wanted a daughter. She says you are the answer to prayers she did not know how to pray. Jasmine cried too, holding Mrs. Kong, feeling Minjun's hand on her shoulder, and understanding finally what home meant. Not a place, not blood, but this. This chosen family. This complicated mess of redemption and hope and love that shouldn't work, but somehow did. 2 years later, Kong Enterprises was 70% legitimate. Minjun had quietly dissolved the most violent operations, using legal pressure and strategic partnerships to push rivals out rather than bullets. He'd established a community fund, helping Korean immigrants with legal fees, business loans, protection from predatory practices. He'd become, gradually, the kind of man his mother had always wanted him to be. It wasn't perfect. There were still shadows in the East Wing, still phone calls he took in private, still moments when Jasmine saw the old coldness flash through his eyes. But they were fewer now, rarer. And when they happened, Mrs. Kong or Jasmine could pull him back from that edge. Jasmine had rebuilt her relationship with her own family. Her mother visited regularly, still worried but accepting. Her brother called weekly, impressed despite himself by what Jasmine had built. Her grandmother and Mrs. Kong had become unlikely friends, bonding over grandchildren they hoped to have someday. On the 2-year anniversary of that day at the airport, Jasmine stood in the garden with Mrs. Kong, watching the sunset. Do you ever regret it? Mrs. Kong asked in English that had become fluent. Saving me that day? Staying here? Never, Jasmine said honestly. You gave me a family, a purpose, a life I didn't know I could have. We gave each other that. Mrs. Kong squeezed her hand. You saved my life twice. Once at the airport with your hands. Once here with your heart. You saved my son's soul. That is a debt I can never repay. You already have. You made me your daughter. You were always my daughter. I just had to wait for you to find your way home. Minjun joined them, and they stood together, this unlikely family forged from desperation and choice and mercy. Jasmine thought about that moment at the airport when she'd almost walked away, when she'd almost let fear and past hurt keep her from helping. How different her life would be if she'd made that choice. But she hadn't walked away. She'd dropped to her knees and fought for a stranger's life. And that stranger had fought for hers in return. What are you thinking about? Minjun asked. About how saving someone's life can end up saving your own. He smiled, the real smile he wore more often now. Yes, it can. And standing there between them, the mother who'd adopted her and the man who'd transformed for her, Jasmine understood that mercy was never wasted. That choosing compassion, even when it was hard, even when it was dangerous, even when it made no logical sense, that was how broken things healed. That was how broken people became whole. She'd saved a woman's life at an airport. That woman had saved hers in return. And together, they'd saved a man who'd forgotten he was worth saving. It wasn't the ending Jasmine had expected, but it was the one she needed. The one they all needed. It was home. If this story moved you, if it made you believe in second chances and chosen family and the power of mercy, smash that subscribe button. Drop a comment telling us about a time someone showed you unexpected kindness. Share this video with someone who needs to hear that it's never too late to choose differently. Because Jasmine's story, it could be anyone's story. It could be your story. Sometimes all it takes is one moment of courage, one choice to help instead of walking away, and everything changes. Thank you for watching. Thank you for being here. And remember, you never know when the person you save might end up saving you.